The Second World War has ended almost 80 years ago. However, the echo of the war still lurks. We are under full propaganda of terrible experiments on people. Executions of entire peoples cause horror and fear even now. Welcome to a new video. In this video, you will learn about 20 of the most unusual and shocking discoveries from World War II. If you like this type of content, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Now let's get started. Number 10. Collection of victory paintings. An extraordinary selection of works was protected by an old man who, without wanting to gain fame or money, decided to protect them from the famous Holocaust by carefully protecting them behind kitchen tiles or wrapping them in cans of food. Cornelius Gurlitt is responsible for the largest number of works of art surviving World War II. During World War II, Adolf Hitler was responsible for prohibiting all types of artistic productions that didn't fit with the ideals of his policies. The massive burnings of banned books, they were part of everyday life. The same thing happened with works of art. All were confiscated due to their monetary value. And if they were not considered acceptable by the president, they were destroyed. Hitler's prohibitions became the business of many, and Hildebrand Gurlitt, 1895 to 1956, was one of the main ones. He is known for being one of the most important art merchants of the Third Reich. He worked hand in hand with Hitler and was in charge of creating his own private and clandestine collection through expropriations by the German army. All the works had been looted from Jewish families or purchased under extremely unfavorable conditions for those who sold them. Hildebrand was Cornelius's father. He died and left him with the incredible collection under his care, but also with the curse of having to watch over it without anyone finding out about his crime, although really it was his father's. Cornelius had been in charge of protecting the collection and divided it between his apartment in Munich, Germany, and his house in Salzburg, Austria. It includes a total of 1,500 works by great artists such as Matisse, Chagall, Klee, Beckmann, Rodin, Canaletto, among other important figures of expression. On September 10, 2010, Cornelius got on a train traveling from Zurich to Munich when the police at a typical customs control noticed that he had 10,000 euros in his pockets. It immediately raised an alert in the country, and they decided to start an investigation. 2 years later, his apartment was tracked down, and it was when the whole world found out that there was a collection larger than that of the London Gallery, living in the apartment of an elderly man in Munich. The stress caused by Gurlitt having been discovered caused him to have a heart attack, and he died on May 6, 2014. Although the origin of the paintings had terrible war marks, thanks to the fact that Gurlitt never said anything about his father's collection, the 1,500 paintings were mostly in good condition. Before dying, he decided to give all his pieces to the Bern Art Museum in Switzerland. The museum was delighted with his contribution, but at the same time it had the difficult task of tracking down the original owners of the works to try to right the mistakes of Gurlitt's past. Number 9. The Katyn Forest Massacre. Also known as the Katyn Forest Massacre, it was a series of mass murders of Polish army officers, police, intellectuals, and other civilians carried out by the Soviet Secret Police, NKVD, led by Lavrenti Beria between April and May 1940, following the 1939 Soviet invasion of Poland at the start of World War II. Based on an official proposal by Beria, dated March 5, 1940, Joseph Stalin and 5 other members of the Soviet Politburo, Molotov, Voroshilov, Mikoyan, Kalinin, and Kaganovich, approved what, according to the Institute of National Remembrance of Poland and other sectors, would be a genocide. It is estimated that the victims were at least 21,768 Polish citizens, executed both in the Katyn Forest, currently Russian territory, and in the prisons of the cities of Kalinin, Kharkov, and other nearby places. Of the total number of deaths, about 8,000 were military prisoners of war, 6,000 were police officers, and the rest were civilian members of the Polish intelligentsia. teachers, artists, researchers, and historians, imprisoned on charges of being saboteurs, spies, landowners, factory owners, lawyers, dangerous public officials, and Catholic priests. Originally, the term Cotton Massacre referred exclusively to the cotton forest murders near the towns of Gniezdowo and Katyn, and 19.5 kilometers west of Smolensk, of Polish army officers interned in the Kozelsk prisoner of war camp. This was the largest of the simultaneous executions suffered by Polish prisoners. Number 8. Operation Bernhard. Operation Bernhard was a Third Reich plot to counterfeit British banknotes. The initial strategy was to drop the banknotes on the United Kingdom to cause a collapse of the British economy during World War II. The first phase was executed in early 1940 by the SD under the code name Unternehmen Andreas, Operation Andrew. The unit successfully duplicated the woven paper used by the British, produced nearly identical engraving blocks, and deduced the algorithm used to create the alphanumeric serial code on each banknote. The unit was closed in early 1942 after its chief Alfred Helmut Naujoks fell into disgrace with his superior officer, Reinhard Heydrich. The plan was resumed later that year. The goal was changed to counterfeiting money to finance German intelligence operations. Instead of a specialized unit within the SD, Nazi concentration camp prisoners were selected and sent to Sachsenhausen for hard labor, led by Major Bernhard Kruger. The unit produced British banknotes until mid-1945. Estimates vary depending on the number and value of impressions, from £132.6 million to £300 million. By the time the unit ceased production, they had perfected the reproduction of artistic engravings on US dollars, although the paper and serial numbers were still being analyzed. The counterfeit money was laundered by exchanging money and other assets. Fake notes from the operation were used to pay Turkish agent Eliasa Bazna, codenamed Cicero, for her work in obtaining British secrets from the UK ambassador in Ankara. In addition, some £100,000 from Operation Bernhard was used to obtain information that helped free Duce Benito Mussolini in Operation Oak in September 1943. In early 1945, the unit was moved to the Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp in Austria, then to the Redl-Zipf tunnel network, and finally to Ebensee. Due to a too precise interpretation of a German order, the prisoners were not executed upon arrival. Shortly afterward, they were freed by the United States Army. Much of the unit's output was dumped into Lakes Toplitz and Grundlsee at the end of the war, but enough entered general circulation until the Bank of England stopped issuing new banknotes and issued a new design after the war. The operation has been dramatized in the BBC comedy drama miniseries Private Schultz and in the 2007 film The Counterfeiters. Number 7. A Pigeon's Last Secret Battle Message. In November 2012, Englishman David Martin from Surrey discovered the skeleton of a pigeon in his chimney. That's not strange news at all, since birds fly in chimneys all the time, although this will remain of one bird that had a small red capsule attached to its leg, and that's the strange part. Inside was a coded World War II era message that had been sealed since it was written about 70 years ago. The letter contained 27 groups of 5 letters and was signed by a Sergeant W. Stott. The bird was found by David Martin in Bletchingley, Surrey, while he was renovating his chimney. There are theories that claim the bird was making its way from behind enemy lines, perhaps from the Nazi occupation of France during the D-Day invasions, heading towards Bletchley Park, which was Britain's main deciphering establishment during the Second World War. Others say that the bird was probably lost, disoriented in bad weather, or was simply exhausted after its trip across the English Channel and landed on the Martins' chimney. Our theory suggests that the bird was spectacularly bad at its job, or it saw Santa Claus in the chimney and stopped for a chat. In December of the same year, Canadian Gordon Young claimed to have partially cracked the code. Using a World War I-era codebook, Young deciphered some of the messages in less than 20 minutes. According to him, Some of the messages read, "Impact right to Jerry or reserve battery here. Headquarters of electrical engineers already located. Troops, panzers, batteries, engineers here." Sergeant Scott turned out to be a 27-year-old paratrooper who had dropped behind enemy lines in Normandy to assess the size of the German army in the area. The young man claims that the rest of the code may be impossible to solve, or possibly faked to try to fool the Germans stationed inside the chimneys of the country houses. More than 250,000 carrier pigeons were used in World War II. They were called into the National Pigeon Service and were used largely to carry secret messages. Number 6. Hidden warehouse in France with weapons from the Second World War. A group of French urban explorers find a huge underground military complex filled with weapons and vehicles. Sometimes, a simple excursion through the countryside can turn into a great adventure. At least, that's what happened to a group of French urban explorers who, as we can read in the Gizmodo blog, located an old bunker full of weapons from World War II during one of their usual battles. According to the authors of the discovery, who have preferred not to reveal the location of the large underground warehouse, most of the vehicles and artillery pieces contained in the site date from this conflict, although some date from after it. Therefore, it is suspected that the bunker may have had some type of use until the 1970s. This complex was built during the First World War, and in addition to the warehouses where the vehicles were found, it has offices and barracks intended to house the troops. Despite having been stored for almost 60 years, most of the cannons and other artillery pieces, as well as the battle tanks, armored vehicles, and military transport trucks are in perfect condition. Just a cleaning to eliminate some of the many mushrooms that, thanks to the humidity and darkness, have grown around it and would be in perfect condition. Number 5. Winston Churchill's secret bunker. The tourist intersection of Piccadilly Street's houses, Winston Churchill's hideout during the Second World War, about 22 meters underground. This place would have sheltered the top leader of the United Kingdom in November and December 1940, coinciding with the air attack by the German bombers known as the Blitz. In addition to serving as a refuge, the British Prime Minister coordinated campaigns such as the Dunkirk evacuation and the Normandy landings with a team of 40 people. Now, history buffs can visit this old bunker. Under the name Down Street, this place was opened in 1907 as a station on the Piccadilly Underground Line. However, it fell into disuse and was closed in 1932. Located in the heart of Mayfair, this unused stop is a short distance from Hyde Park Corner and Green Park stations. It had a particularly deep underground, and there were long corridors that connected to the busy street of the same name. Everything that made it unviable as a station made it the perfect place to establish a secret bunker during World War II, historian and guide Sidney Holloway told CNN. Staff lived and worked in this underground space in shifts of up to 12 hours. However, these tenants enjoyed better conditions. During the war, bunkers and shelters had no rations, Holloway notes. On the contrary, the employees of the converted Down Street enjoyed a better livelihood than the civilians living outside. In November 1940, people began to fear for the life of Winston Churchill, City. Although Down Street came into use at the start of the Second World War, 1939, the Prime Minister stayed down here 5 times in the winter of 1940. If you want to visit the shelter, Hidden London has made selected dates available to the public between January 15th and February 13th, 2022. Tickets can be purchased from Friday, December 3rd through this link. Number 4. Ravensbrück Women's Concentration Camp. Ravensbrück was an all-women Nazi concentration camp from 1939 to 1945, located in northern Germany, 90 kilometers. 56 miles, north of Berlin at a site near the town of Ravensbrück, part of Fürstenberg-Havel. In the concentration camp system, it was second in size to the Auschwitz-Birkenau women's camp, which was in Germany-annexed Poland. The largest national group consisted of 40,000 Polish women. Others included 26,000 Jewish women from various countries, 18,800 Russian, 8,000 French, and 1,000 Dutch. More than 80% were political prisoners. Among the latter, it is estimated that between 150 and 200 Spanish exiles passed through Ravensbrück. Many slave labor prisoners were employed by Siemens AG. From 1942 to 1945, medical experiments were conducted to evaluate the effectiveness of sulfonamides. From July 1942 to September 1943, experiments were conducted at Ravensbrück to investigate the effectiveness of sulfonamide, a synthetic antimicrobial agent. The prisoners were infected with bacteria or neurotoxins such as Streptococcus, Clostridium perfringens, which causes gas gangrene, and Clostridium tetani, which causes tetanus. Blood circulation was disrupted by plugging the blood vessels at both ends of the wound and creating a condition similar to that of a battlefield wound. The infection was aggravated by introducing wood and glass shavings into the wounds. The infection was treated with sulfa and other drugs to determine their effectiveness. In the spring of 1941, the SS established a small adjacent camp for male internees, who built and managed the camp's gas chambers in 1944. Of about 130,000 female prisoners who passed through the Ravensbrück camp, about 50,000 perished, about 2,200 were murdered in the gas chambers, and 15,000 survived until liberation. In 1942, the Uckermark Youth Protection Camp was added. Number 3. Nazi tank found in a basement. A retiree kept a World War II tank in the garage of his house as a souvenir. The German prosecutor's office wants him to be sentenced to pay €500,000 for illegally storing war weapons. This is an 84-year-old man who had hidden a Nazi tank in the basement of his house in Kiel, northern Germany. It had stored a 40-ton Panzer tank and an anti-aircraft gun. The arsenal was discovered in 2015, while the police were searching for a shipment of missing objects from the era, including a bronze statue that the accused had at his home. The police also seized pistols, assault rifles, and more than 1,000 bullets. The man claimed that he had bought the tank in the United Kingdom and that it was a piece of junk. The prosecutor in the case, Thorsten Wolk, has explained that the tank was restored by the defendant, which would mean a violation of the War Weapons Control Act and other crimes related to weapons, an infraction that is punishable by a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 5 years in prison. The court's experts believe that only the anti-aircraft gun can be considered a weapon of war and that none of the other seized weapons work. Number 2. Time capsule from the Nazi era. When Sebastian Yurtseven began to repair his aunt's house, which had suffered significant damage due to the flooding of the Vom River in the city of Hagen, state of North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, he could not imagine what he would find when removing a plasterboard covering, better known as plasterboard, that had partially come loose. He found a cache of objects from the Nazi era. The first thing he saw when removing the plasterboard was a newspaper from 1945, which was followed by a large number of objects such as old masks, a revolver, brass knuckles, compressed air cylinders, insignia of the National Socialist Party with its characteristic eagle, belt buckles with the eagle and the swastika, among others. In addition, hundreds of letters and documents from the National Sozialistische Volkswohlfahrt, a type of social security of Nazi Germany, have also appeared. As a history teacher, I get goosebumps when I talk about this, says Sebastian Yurtseven himself, who says he had no idea what he would find since his family bought the house in the 1960s. It is likely that the objects belong to the local director of the National Sozialistische Volkswohlfahrt, who is known to have lived in that area and were surely hidden in 1945 before the advance of the Allies to try to get rid of incriminating evidence in the face of the imminent defeat of Hitler and Nazi Germany. Dr. Ralph Blank of the Hagen Municipal Museums and Archives says that it is an incredibly important find, especially with regard to the documents of the National Sozialistische Volkswohlfahrt, since it sheds light on the actions and activities of Nazi agencies at the local level. This was a state organization with various branches designed to provide help to needy groups such as the elderly or the homeless, always according to the racial guidelines of the Third Reich. In total, 12 boxes have been filled with objects and documents that have been delivered to the authorities, who have made it known that the finds are being carefully cleaned, preserved, and scientifically evaluated. Certain objects and documents will also find their place in the permanent exhibition of the New City Museum. Number 1. Sobibor Extermination Camp. The Sobibor Extermination Camp was an extermination camp of Nazi Germany created in March 1942, which was part of Operation Reinhard. Its name comes from the name of the town of Sobibor, next to which it was built. It is currently part of the Lublin Voivodeship in Poland. Mostly Soviet Jews captured on the Eastern Front, prisoners of war and gypsies arrived there. Transported to Sobibor in cattle trains in harsh conditions, they were finally poisoned in gas chambers that were powered by a gasoline engine to produce carbon monoxide. Later, crystals of a pesticide marketed under the name Zyklon B were introduced, which was much more effective and faster. The system to get them to enter the chamber was to make them believe that they were disinfection showers and instill confidence in the prisoners. An estimated 200,000 people died at Sobibor, the vast majority of them Jews. On July 5, 1942, Himmler ordered that the camp be closed as an extermination center and converted into a concentration camp. Camp 4 was built to store captured Soviet ammunition. In September 2014, a team of archaeologists found the remains of the concentration camp's gas chambers. We come to the end of this video. Tell us your opinion in the comments box. If you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss future videos like this one. See you next time!